Hello, hello. It has been a while. Yes, there's an echo. Sorry, I'm in a new apartment and my acoustic panels have not arrived and they won't until next week. It will only be for this video, so try and just ignore my voice sounding weird for now. Now, I may have gone a bit off a bit more than I could chew with this video, as I wanted to try and make like a complete video solely for animal-human like D&D fantasy races, but surprise surprise that turned out to be pretty heavy, so here we are a full month later. Anyway, I'm not gonna waste your time with a long intro, so here's the gist of it. We are creating a lot of requested fantasy D&D races, like it doesn't have to be D&D, but it's sort of D&D adjacent, right? There will be chapters at the bottom of the video for specific models, and the links are all in the description as per usual, along with the link to the community Discord, which you should definitely join. Now, with all of that said, let's go. To start us off, we are doing a frog, or more specifically a toad. Now, you'll notice pretty fast that I'm not just doing like race templates here. Each of these models will be some kind of actual character with a concept on top of them beyond just what the species is. In this case, we're doing a Toadfolk Ranger, so you know, bow, arrows, light armor, so on. Now, because I know that my sound quality right now is a bit weird and people might get bothered by the echo, I'm probably going to try and talk a bit less in this video than usual, so I'll try to anyway. But I'll still chime in to give context where I feel this necessary. But yes, here we go, first model, wish me luck. There we go, a Toadfolk Ranger. This one in specific I will probably end up using for D&D one day, much like the models I created in the last video I made. This won't apply to all of these models because, you know, there's like a lot of these are going to be from different settings, but in the case of this one specifically, it will probably make for a fitting NPC for the setting that I plan to host in. As per usual, I will semi-design these from like a top-down perspective as well, which is why you'll see me constantly shifting the camera to look at them from above, but anyway, we'll see. Moving on to the next model. In the last video that I made, the one about hags, that is, like, I got a lot of positive feedbacks on the bogling I created. However, I don't feel like it really did the whole insectoid-humanoid thing justice, because strictly speaking it wasn't a humanoid, so here we go, I want to rectify that. This time we're doing a much bigger and more regal looking bug. And so the first challenge is just to try and make something that's, you know, standing on two legs still look like it's an insect, which is easier said than done, so wish me luck. The hardest part by far with this model is like the clothing, right? No matter how much I tried, none of the actual clothing pieces from Hero Forge feel like it fits on an insectoid, so I basically have to use a ton of kit bashing slots to try and create this kind of drapey overhanging robe. Otherwise, I don't intend to go too crazy with this model because I want to keep the focus on the actual insectoid parts, and the more I throw on other random crap, the less, you know, the more it will pull attention away from that, you know. One bit of detail that I will put on this model, however, is like this weird necklace. I always want to have some kind of narrative hook on models, you know, some kind of concept beyond just the race in this case. So this will have to do. It will signify some kind of basic sun, moon, seasonal religion thing. I feel like it's fitting for a bug that, you know, comes from the desert, which, you know, I imagine that this bug does. Alright, it is time for something a bit meatier. This here is going to be a boar, and the sub-concept will be a kind of like really aggressive, gritty gladiator. So we're creating a very combat-orientated, bloody-looking butcher, basically. And yes, I know that turning a pig into a butcher is a trope as old as time, but it's good, so I'm doing it. The main trick here is obviously that in fact I'm going to be using the big boar mount and kit bashing it down to a point where I'm only using the head on an otherwise humanoid body. It's a bit of a cheat, and I technically did this with a toad as well. But since there isn't really like a good pig head in Nearforge, so this is what we gotta do. Besides, the boar looks great, so it's a nice way to finally get some use out of it. Otherwise, I barely ever tend to touch these like mount models, so you know, at least this way I can say I've done it. There we go. I'm honestly a big fan of how this one turned out. I especially like the skulls on the chains. I think that was a nice way to use some kit bashing slots. This one I do imagine I will get some good use out of in DnD as well one day. Honestly, no matter the setting that I host, it's like very unlikely that I won't have a use for exotic looking gladiator mobs. But yes, I hope you liked the piggy. Now let's move on. Alright, this next model is a bit of a callback to an older video of mine. I will be recreating my old lizard man here. And honestly, I don't want to change all that much because that original lizard I made is probably one of the best models I've ever made, I think. It's up there with, you know, Ham Hunch and the others. But I want to give it some touch-ups and smoothen it out a bit now that we have kit bashing and all. Initially, I even wanted to do 2 lizards for this video because, you know, lizard men are hands down the coolest of all of these races. But for the sake of the time and everything, I had to refrain. Boohoo. Anyway, here we go. I'm going to do some good old traditional double modeling here. Lizardmen and Dragonborn, etc. are probably one of the few instances where I still do use that trick, because combining 2 heads like this is like by far the best way to get good looking lizard features. Besides that, all this model really needs is just some extra detail, right? And time for another callback to an old video, the rat. So I once made a whole video for rat folk as well, like honestly incredibly underrated creatures. I mean, rats are just the cutest. And this one I will definitely use as a D&D campaign NPC, most likely as some sort of like shady criminal underground banker type character, which means he's going to look pretty gritty and dirty overall, but still with a lot of random bits of gold on him. Better yet, this time I can actually use face customize for one of these models, like rodent features for some reason, while the other ones weren't, were part of like that big package. So I can kind of twist and adjust the features however I want, so hopefully this one will be a little bit more expressive than the previous models in this video. And there we go, nothing too crazy with this model, but it's definitely my favorite of the bunch so far. It's just the fact that I can use kit bashing to shrink down the like hands and the feet. Honestly, like it goes such a long way in making him really look like a rat with those like tiny little rat mittens, right? As opposed to the old default here for hands and feet, which were always really oversized and still are. I mean, honestly, they need to release body customizer already. Anyway, it's great. Alright, anyway, next model. Okay, now it's time for hands down the hardest one of the whole batch, Birdfolk, Kenku, Aarakocra, whatever you want to call them. For starters, the original Ravenfolk head in Hereforge sucks. It is terrible. It is just awful. So, we're going to have to try and find a workaround for that. I also don't want all of these models to use my old tricks of just hunching the model over and putting hoods on them to obscure the worst parts of the old animal features. So it's going to be tricky. Anyway, the aim here will be to create a kind of robed-looking sage figure, inspired by the broken Arakoa from WoW. Again, this will require a lot of creative custom tweaks using kit bashing for clothing and body shape and everything else, so yeah, it'll be a hard one. Wish me luck. As you can probably tell, I really can't make my mind up on this character. I keep on going through different color schemes and even changing the whole concept on the fly. And what I eventually end up doing here is just going back to something that I know I'm comfortable with, right? I decided on the fly to make this character an evil NPC aligned with the cultist from my vampire video. Therefore, I'm changing the whole look to fit those models basically, and it gives me a good excuse to use this character as an NPC in a future campaign as well. But if you think I took the easy way out by like making the whole concept around that whole cult thing, then you know, go ahead and flame me in the comments. But I really did not know what else to do. So yeah, I will take that fight. I'm here for it. Tortle. This here might honestly be one of the most highly requested model concepts I've ever gotten, and I'm gonna be real with you, it is not easy to make a good Tortle in Heroforge. It was near enough impossible before kit bashing, and I think it's really hard even now. The problem is that without body customizer, Heroforge doesn't really lend itself to custom shapes, right? Like, they're all very humanoid shaped models. And a Tortle character, in my opinion, has to be very, very compact. So, step number one, I guess, is just to try and figure out the proportions and turn this character, like, into basically a chunky ball. I don't know, we'll see. Step number two is, much like on the insect model we made, is to use a bunch of custom drapes to sort of cover up all of the bad parts of the model and obscure anything that looks out of place, clippy or cartoony. Just hide everything, right? The problem with this is that I then have to come up with a good excuse as to why a Tortle is covered in so many drapes to begin with, but we'll figure something out, right? Okay, so it turns out that turning the Tortle into a British king was a very bad idea. I don't know why I went down that route. I think I was just really lacking inspiration. I defaulted back to what if I just put loads of detail and color in through dressing him up like King Charles, but yeah, mistakes happen, right? Anyway, I'm almost completely resetting the outfit here to instead turn him into a more thematic looking tribal warrior tank. I think this will look better and also makes it much more applicable as a general template for Tortle characters. Alright, moving on to something admittedly a bit more generic, the wolf or the werewolf, whatever. This is a model I've technically recreated several times over in the past and I don't want to change it too much. Besides just being a wolf, this will also be used as kind of a pseudo-gladiator-esque NPC along with the Boar butcher from earlier. And before you say it, I know that you can use the Heroforge Husky model and twist it into a humanoid to create a really cool looking creepy werewolf. But I don't want half of these models to be created solely using kit bashing tricks, so we're gonna stick with the trusty old kobold head and keep this model fairly classic Heroforge looking. Rather than giving it a weapon, I decided to just kind of amplify what a werewolf already has by giving it this massive spiky claw arm. I feel like if you had this wolf imprisoned and being used as a gladiator, it seems like an appropriate weapon that they would strap onto it rather than making it fight with actual weapons, Also, it looks cool, rule of cool. here we go. Nothing overcomplicated with this one. It has a few nods on it to past versions and other like setting related things, but I won't get into detail about that all here. Otherwise, I obviously used most kit bashing slots just to smack a bunch of like extra little fur pieces on it. I'm not sure if that was really worth it, like I could probably do something else with those kit bashing slots, but it at least makes the silhouette a bit more unique compared to the previous models. Now, time for yet another recreation of a model from an older video, the Minotaur. This one ought to be interesting because much like the rodent from earlier, I can actually use face customizer this time to shape the face. I want to create one of those kind of creepy, sort of flat looking bull faces inspired by the Vermintide Minotaurs, and besides that, the goal is really just to make him look powerful as all hell. Like, it's the biggest model of the pack, it's a Minotaur, so he needs to look the part. Now, obviously, this one looks quite similar to the Boar from earlier in terms of the colors, the skulls and the chains and everything, but rather than just being a mindless warrior, I wanted this one to look a bit more like honorable and traditionalistic, with all these decorations like the feathers and the totem, etc. I hope that does enough to set them apart, but if not, if you disagree, by all means go and flame me below. Now, let's move on. I feel like maybe there's some popular fantasy animal-humanoid race that I'm missing here, but it slipped my mind. I really can't figure it out. I don't know. I'm thinking, but oh well, you know, like, listen, if I forget, then it probably wasn't that important to begin with, right? Okay, so thank you all very much for watching. If you made it this far, please let me know in the comments if you feel like I missed something really important, or just to let me know what you'd like to see me do next. If you liked this video, please press like and subscribe. If you disliked it, by all means press dislike. As always, links in the description below, along with a link to the Discord and my Patreon. Speaking of which, I want to give a massive special thanks to my Patreon subscribers. Stoat Ross, Camelius, Nicholas A. Paul, Ken Hayes, Ghost GM, Deus Mercurius Magna, Where the Box, Hidden Squid, Dread97, Mike Horst, Amaryllis, Naralon, Gesteigpanzer, I don't know, Bob Bobinson, and The Old Fossil. Thank you all very much. Without your support, these like big long form videos would be very, very hard for me to do, so I appreciate it. Now, with all that said, video over. Until next time, farewell. Oh, and yes, I will be, for the people who are wondering where are all the other fancy races, like, you know, dwarves, elves, tieflings, like, I will be doing a separate video for all of the, like, humanoid races. Don't worry, that will all come later. Anyway, bye.